I had really formed an amazing community on Top Gun and devotion with the Navy. And when J.J. Abrams got on board, it really opened it up to blow audiences' mind and put them in a cockpit that they've never had access to. After Top Gun, and it was while I was shooting Devotion that I was connected, my buddy Brian Ferguson, who's the liaison between Top Gun, the institution, and Top Gun, the movie, told me that they were trying to put a Blue Angels doc together. They were having some issues, and he said, would you mind talking to Boss Wooldridge? He's the most legendary boss in the Blue Angels history. And I said, absolutely. So we started talking about kind of his vision for it. And then as we were talking, I realized I had really formed an amazing community on Top Gun and devotion with the Navy. And I'd really known all of these people through that process. I mean, we lived on all these naval bases. So I kind of knew all the kind of the important figures that would be necessary, and I learned so much about the evolution of IMAX technology and how it's gotten smaller and smaller, where you could actually put these IMAX cameras on these planes and not affect the airworthiness. So it was like all of a sudden, as I was talking to Boss, I was starting to realize that there was a technological moment for this thing where we really could give audiences something unprecedented. And so it started developing, and when J.J. Abrams got on board, it really opened it up in a completely different way, where we really, in addition to, having, the human side to learning about these Blue Angels pilots and what life looks like for them, 300 days on the road a year, taking this show all around the world, we also got a chance to blow audiences' mind and put them in a cockpit that they've never had access to.
There are moments the world will slow down for just a couple seconds.
I don't think people really have a concept of what G's are and what that is on your body. Obviously, during Top Gun, we had to figure out how to increase our G tolerance so we weren't passing out in the back of jets. But the crazy thing about the Blue Angels is because of the precision, because they're flying so close to each other at such crazy speeds, how a G suit works is it literally inflates and squeezes blood in your legs and keeps it in the top half of your body so you don't pass out. The Blue Angels do not have a G suit because it would affect how that stick moves and potentially harm other people when you're flying in that close proximity. So they have to learn how to endure more Gs than any other pilot and do it without that G suit, which is incredibly impressive. So what you're seeing in that centrifuge is them increasing those Gs and essentially until they pass out, and learning how to continue to push that limit so that we're never worried about, those pilots G-locking when they're up there pulling off these maneuvers. I think that's a really impressive part of this documentary because it's such a human part of it. You see what it feels like someone that you and I would know, just an ordinary person walking into this thing where you are like spun around like a washing machine until you pass out, and you continue to do that because that's what these pilots have to do. Even when you hit perfection, there's a point past that you can always do better. And I think that's such a defining aspect of the Blues.
When you're flying 12 inches apart, everybody's lives are in each other's hands.
It's an eye-opener for how inherently dangerous this job is.
Ready, roll, hat.
My grandfather was a flight surgeon in the Navy, and I remember, he was so excited to bring all the cousins. I grew up in a really big family, so a lot of cousins. So my aunts and my mom, we all went to the Blue Angel show in Texas. It was outside of Dallas, and I remember going to that show and not really knowing. As a kid, you sort of, okay, like the Blue Angels, like what is this? And I remember just like looking up and my eyes being like so locked on what was going on. It was like so overwhelming and so intense and so visceral and loud and dynamic and looking at other, like, as a kid looking up, your mind is blown, but then to look at the adults and their minds are blown, it's a truly wonderful thing to be around when people are pushing the limits of what you think is possible. To have your mind blown in this world is just an amazing thing. And I remember the second part that kind of blew my mind was that these pilots got out of their planes and they came and they signed autographs, they took pictures with everybody, and they were so kind and they were so generous with their time, and they just sort of represented, I don't know, who I want to be, which is someone who does pushes the boundaries of what people think is possible, and also is a really good person, and treats people well. And the Blue Angels really are that. Not only are the best pilots in the world, but they're the best of the Navy. They're the best of America, and I was just kind of fascinated by them. So I had a poster of them on my wall ever since I was, it's that moment on. I had my signed Blue Angels poster in my bedroom, and until I left for college, and so. But I think that's the fun part, is like to in this documentary we not only get a chance to see, we capture with all these IMAX cameras like the visceral flight, and then the toll on the body, and with we had the aerial team from Top Gun Maverick have unprecedented access to film these things that people have never seen on camera before. But in addition to that, we're getting to spend time with the pilots on the ground with their families to see what a year in the Blue Angels is like. I'm the best part about, I feel like, where I am right now is like I'm getting to work with all the filmmakers like I've idolized my whole life, and I'm getting the best filmmaking education right now. So the film school that I'm on right now, I there's no plans to direct anytime soon, but if I ever step into that chair, I want to make sure I'm prepared. But I'm definitely, anybody that knows me knows I just love movies, and the happiest you'll ever see me is on a film set. So this is the same way with this documentary. Is there's so many, in addition to being a really cool documentary, there's so many cool filmic, aspects of this movie that really make it a cool theatrical experience. It's a really human perspective into a pretty extraordinary feat.